I also would like to introduce our guest joining us on the broadcast, Sushant Sareen, who's a senior fellow ORF, strategic affairs expert. Mr. Sareen, thank you for being on India Today. Rajiv Dogra, who's a former Indian diplomat, and Niranjan Marjani, who's again a foreign affairs expert. I want to thank you all for being on India Today this afternoon. Sushant Sareen, if I could come to you on two factors. First, of course, largely to understand that Iran has very limited possibilities of taking this head on when it comes to the US, given their military capability. So will they resort to other means, using proxy forces or blocking the Strait of Hormuz in order to block the oil supply? Also, the very tweet that has come in from the Russian Federation Council, where they say that as far as nuke in Iran is concerned, we will provide all the support and they will continue to make it because not much has been affected. Sushant.
Look, I'm not going to go behind what statements are being issued from various capitals and various personalities. All of them are obviously going to be loaded. I think what is important is to understand the unpredictability of war. As of now, it seems, yes, the US and Israel have certainly got a major lead over Iran. But then, Iran also gets a vote. And the question is, what are Iran's options? Sandeep very eloquently put it that, yes, the Iranians can block the Straits of Hormuz. And what is the objective of war? The objective of war is to cause as much damage to the enemy as you can. Now, for Iran right now, everybody is an enemy. And they need to show that they can do certain things that will not just force Iran onto the table, but that will also force other people to come onto the table. So, yes, Straits of Hormuz certainly remains a very valid option. Second, yes, they can, depending on how many lives they are willing to sacrifice, and the Iranians could be interested in sacrificing many lives, they could start attacking American bases or American targets and not just Israel. Now, that pulls the Americans into this conflict in a much bigger way. But then the Americans have to ask themselves the question that do they want that quick in and out and deliver the message, bring Iran onto the table, and this is where things end? Or do they get into a longer kind of a conflict, a long drawn out conflict? How much of Iran are they going to bomb? Who all are they going to bomb? Will they be able to capture Iran after that? What are they going to achieve with this long drawn out? If this conflict becomes long drawn out, then what happens? So I would imagine that the American calculation will be that they've delivered a very strong message. This should bring the Iranians onto the table. The Iranians are not going to come onto the table simply because if they come onto the table now, it means total surrender.
Right.
I don't think they would want to go onto a negotiating table with no cards to play. So they need to have some cards to play, which means that we are in that unpredictable, situation of how this war is likely to unfold from here on.
All right, Rajiv Dogra, if I could get your point of view on this, because Iran is really hoping for global support and that is what they are urging. So far, they are portraying like they are at the receiving end. Obviously, not really believable given their support to the proxy forces, to how, they are wanting to affect the US bases also. But given the fact that we've seen a lot of the world leaders respond so far, and while majority call for de-escalation and using diplomacy as a route, I want you to comment on Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he spoke to the Iranian president, and a very measured response. India remains neutral so far, but will India continue with the same position? Could there be a point where India could be forced to take sides? How do you see it?
Well, that's a load of questions. Good that you're asking all those. And starting with Prime Minister Modi, I think that is a good, sane, positive voice in support of a second thought, that instead of continuing with the war, all the actors concerned should give peace a chance. That's the central message. And unfortunately, not many other leaders, not many other countries have given out a similar call. So I think that stands with the Indian tradition of trying to de-escalate things wherever they occur. Second is the question that why is it that only Iran is put in the guilty corner? Is Iran the cause of it all? Has Iran started this war? Did Iran target civilians to start with? Or did the fault lie somewhere else? Another question that I would like to ask, thinking aloud, is that America claims they use the bunker buster bombs. What is the proof that only bunker buster bombs were used? After all, Trump had talked of using tactical nukes a couple of days back. Are we sure that they were only bunker buster bombs and nothing else? Because Medvedev's statement, I mean, I take it that Medvedev can be loose in his comments
Right.
sometimes. But the fact that former president of Russia, presently occupying a very senior position in Russia, speaks of transfer of nukes by some country, he didn't say Russia, some country to Iran, that means that Russia thinks that things may have gone out of control and escalated to a very serious level through this bombing by Americans. So there are a lot of imponderables that we are witnessing right now. The other point I wish to make, I'm no supporter of Iran, but I think as a dispassionate observer and participant of diplomacy for many decades, I also wish to point out that so far, including in the previous instance when they were close to war between Iran and Israel, Iran's response and Iran's actions have been very measured. Even now, despite having sent in missiles and so on, Iran has been restrained compared to Israel's actions in Iran so far. So I think there would be surprises now from Iran's side, whether they are on American bases in Gulf, and some of them are just about 30 kilometers away from Iranian territory, or on ships, or elsewhere, remains to be seen. But for the moment, I don't see peace returning to this region.
All right, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, since you've raised the point of proof, I'd like to take this to Sandeep Unithan, because there have been contradictions as far as this is concerned. US President Donald Trump saying that it has been a successful attack on the 3 key sites in Iran. But Iran is maintaining that they had shifted their assets earlier on and there hasn't been any significant damage. So US has nothing to celebrate about. Who is to believe, and how do you observe the aftermath of the strike?
Well, good question, Suresha. And in fact, we must wait for the bomb damage assessment, the photographs. A few of them are out, but I think we should see this in greater detail and analyze this to see to what extent Donald Trump is correct in his statements about, having neutralized all of Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, especially Fordo. For now, it doesn't appear that the damage has been as substantial as it's been claimed, because all we are seeing is a couple of photographs with a few craters, a few holes in the target sites, no massive craters of the kind that you would have expected with the use of such massive ordnance. So actually, we're waiting for those photographs, the evidence that Iran's nuclear capability has really been set back by a number of years by these attacks on these 3 facilities. It's unprecedented. The numbers that he's talking about, 30 Tomahawk missiles, 12 GBU-57s, these are munitions of a kind that have never been used. In fact, this is the first combat use of the GBU-57. It's a massive bomb. It's each GBU-57 weighs as much as more than, in fact, 2 MiG-21 fighter aircraft. That's how heavy that bomb is. It can be only carried by 3 bombers of the United States, 3 types of bombers. And, the use of that, so far from the photographs that are emerging, the satellite imagery that we are seeing, doesn't seem to suggest that the damage has been as massive as the US is claiming it is. So we actually would like to see a little more concrete evidence, and I emphasize the word concrete to,
Right.
before we can go to any conclusions that Iran's nuclear facilities have been completely destroyed.
All right. Well, we do wait for that. Niranjan Marjani, I want to come to you because this, of course, is a significant point and will really decide for what Iran's level of retaliation be. But even as we discuss their options, because Trump says it is time for peace, but it will be a loss of face for Iran if they back down. So they say we will not back down. What do you think will be the pros and cons of Iranian retaliation? How far do you think they can go?
Definitely, if Iran at this point of time accepts US offer for a dialogue, then it will be a loss of face. And after the attacks by the United States, Iran will be looking to retaliate against either United States bases in the Middle East or even against Israel. Now, what kind of attack can Iran carry out? Only I think we'll have to wait and see if at all it retaliates. But it does have a few options with it, like it can block the Strait of Hormuz, as we have been discussing, and
Right.
it could carry out attacks against US bases. It could use its proxies like Hezbollah and Houthis to carry out attacks. But I would like to, raise one more point in this. We are talking about the escalation between Iran on one hand and US and Israel on the other hand, and how long can this conflict go on? But we also need to understand, when we talk about Iran attacking US bases, then the Gulf states also come into picture, and will they be willing to be drawn into this conflict? I think we also need to consider this question. Yes, it is true that the Gulf states do not have very cordial relations with Iran, but how much conflict even can Gulf states sustain, and whether they can support US and Israel position for a long drawn conflict or war against Iran, because it will include a massive economic costs for everyone in the region. So I think we also need to focus on that perspective, how the Gulf states would think and how they would act in this conflict while US and Israel take action against Iran. So I do think that Iran will look forward to strike. Iran will retaliate against the US and Israel. And I don't think that the region is going to be stable, at least for the next few days. And I think this conflict will continue. That is how I read the situation.
All right.